Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to go my review of WCW's Fall Brawl 1994. Starting off the evening, we go to our first match of the night. It is for the WCW Television Championship. It is Johnny B. Bad versus Steven Regal. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Johnny and Regal, with Johnny keeping the pace of the match. Johnny hits an airplane spin on Regal in the middle of the ring. Sir William then attacks Johnny B. Bad with the referee being distracted. Regal then lands multiple European uppercuts on Johnny B. Bad. Johnny and Regal both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Johnny hitting Regal with a high knee. Johnny then hits a head scissors on Regal. Then Johnny ultimately hits a roll-up on Regal, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match, and at that time, new WCW Television Champion, is Johnny B. Bad. Hats off to Johnny B. Bad for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a loser leaves WCW match. It is Kevin Sullivan versus Cactus Jack. I thought this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Sullivan and Jack, with Jack keeping the pace of the match. Kevin then throws Jack off the top rope to the exposed concrete floor. Jack then hits an elbow drop on Kevin Sullivan for a near fall. Sullivan then hits a roll-up on Cactus Jack, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Kevin Sullivan. Hats off to Kevin Sullivan for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. It is Jim Duggan versus Stunning Steve Austin. This was a glorified squash match. Duggan lands multiple strikes on Austin, and then Duggan ultimately lands a big splash on Austin in the middle of the ring, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match, and at that time, new WCW United States Heavyweight Champion, is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hats off to Hacksaw Jim Duggan for getting the win in that matchup and becoming the new WCW United States Heavyweight Champion. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW Tag Team Championships. It is Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma versus Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot. I thought this was a good matchup as well. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Orndorff and Roma keeping the pace of the match. Orndorff then hits a knee drop. Roma then hits an elbow drop off the top rope as well. Orndorff then hits a pile driver on Bagwell on the outside. It looked absolutely brutal. Paul Roma then goes for the cover, pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma. Hats off to Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a triangle match. It is the Guardian versus Vader versus Sting. I thought this was a good matchup as well. Back and forth matchup between the Guardian, Vader, and Sting, with Vader keeping the pace of the match. Vader hits a Vader splash on the Guardian, pins him for the 3, and the Guardian is now eliminated from this match. Vader then unloads devastating strikes on Sting. Vader then lands a splash on Sting as well, but a masked man ends up hitting Sting. Referee calls the match, and Vader ultimately gets the win. Hats off to Vader for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Dustin Rhodes and Dusty Rhodes, as well as the Nasty Boys, versus Terry Funk and Buckhouse Buck, Arn Anderson, and Colonel Parker in a War Games matchup. I thought this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Arn and Dustin starting the matchup. Dustin, Dusty, and the Nasty Boys were keeping the pace of the match, with Dusty applying a figure 4 leg lock on Colonel Parker. Referee sounds for the bell. And your winners of the match are Dustin Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys. A couple things I want to say about Fall Brawl 94 before I get out of here, man. It was an okay event. I'm not even going to consider it really being a top echelon of pay-per-views for them, to be honest with you. There was a couple matches on here that I did like. There were some that I could have done without. Johnny B. Bad versus Steven Regal. I mentioned this in the last pay-per-view. Johnny B. Bad and Regal were severely underrated, especially Steven Regal. I think he was a great wrestler, a great talent for WCW, and as well as Johnny B. Bad. Now, when with Johnny B. Bad, when he went over to WWE and he was known as Wild Man Mark Marrow, didn't really have a great career or even came close to the career that he had in WCW. WCW was really pushing Johnny B. Bad in the early days, early 90s of WCW. So obviously he didn't have the same push, if you will, when he got into WWE. But this match between Johnny B. Bad and Steven Regal was a solid match, with Johnny becoming victorious in this match and becoming the new television champion. Solid opening matchup to start Fall Brawl 94. Kevin Sullivan versus Cactus Jack in a loser leaves WCW match. It was a good match. It was a solid match. I was kind of hoping that Cactus Jack would beat Kevin Sullivan. I'm not 100% sure if Jack was having contract issues with WCW at the time or they were releasing Cactus Jack. I don't know if this was the time that he went over to ECW and cut that great promo with the WCW Tag Team Champions Championship belts. It was a solid match. Jim Duggan making a surprise debut, if you will, going up against Steve Austin for the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. It was a cool moment. Glorified squash match with Duggan hitting a big splash on Austin in the middle of the ring and picking up the victory over Austin and becoming the new United States Heavyweight Champion. The triangle match, Guardian and Vader and Sting. It was an okay matchup. I didn't really understand the concept of the match because the ending was just horrible. You didn't really know who won the match. I mean, there was a masked man that came into the ring to attack Sting, and the referee sounds for the bell, and then somehow Vader gets the win. Very confusing. And obviously the main event. It was all about the main event, War Games matchup. Dustin and Dusty Rhodes and the Nasty Boys versus Terry Funk, Bunkhouse Buck, Arn Anderson, and Colonel Parker. That's pretty much all Fall Brawl 94 was about, was the main event, in my honest opinion. Even the video package that they, showed with Dusty and Dustin Rhodes looking for a partner after what Arn Anderson did to him in the previous pay-per-view with Arn hitting that devastating DDT on Dustin when they were tag team partners. Dusty Rhodes looking for, two more people to join his team against, Terry Funk, Buck, Anderson, and Colonel Parker, and then Dusty meeting the Nasty Boys in some kind of bar. So the video packages were cool, but at the end of the day, Fall Brawl 94 was all about the War Games match, the main event. That's exactly what it was all about. So as far as a rating for Fall Brawl 1994, I'm going to have to give it a solid 4 at best, man. Like I said, obviously some of the Fall Brawls down the line were really good. I feel like this Fall Brawl was not one of them. So I'm going to have to give WCW Fall Brawl 1994 a solid 4 at best. But this is my review of WCW's Fall Brawl 1994. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.